In Venezuela, a waterfall drops so far that most of its water turns to mist before it ever touches the ground. It's the tallest of 12 waterfalls carved by rivers powerful enough to reshape entire landscapes, from a canyon that swallows a river whole to a sheet of water nearly 2 kilometers wide. This is the countdown of the waterfalls so massive they defy belief. 12 waterfalls, ranked by scale, power, and sheer impossibility, counting down from the merely enormous to the one that disappears into its own mist before it lands. Deep in New Zealand's Fiordland, Sutherland Falls drops 580 meters in 3 thundering tiers, so remote that most visitors reach it only after a 4-day hike along the Milford Track. The drone climbs alongside the first tier, tracing the water as it explodes off a hanging valley high in the Southern Alps before disappearing into forest below. At the base, the impact of 580 meters of falling water creates a permanent windstorm of spray that soaks the surrounding forest year-round. Discovered by prospector Donald Sutherland in 1880, the falls were once wrongly measured as the tallest in the world before more accurate surveys ranked it among the top 10. No road reaches Sutherland Falls. The only ways in are a multi-day trek along the Milford Track or a scenic flight by small plane over the Southern Alps. The 3 tiers step down through native beech forests so thick that the middle drop is almost entirely hidden from view until a hiker is standing directly beneath it. Fiordland receives over 6 meters of rain a year, keeping Sutherland Falls running at full power even when waterfalls elsewhere in New Zealand slow to a trickle. Trampers who complete the 4-day trek describe the final approach as the loudest silence they have ever heard, the roar swallowing every other sound in the valley. In Iceland, the glacial river Eystrida suddenly bends and drops twice in quick succession at Gullfoss, plunging into a 32-meter canyon so deep that the water seems to vanish into the earth itself. The drone follows the Eystrida River as it widens across a flat plain before suddenly disappearing over the first of 2 perpendicular drops. At the canyon's edge, the second drop turns almost 90 degrees from the first, sending the full volume of the river crashing sideways into the gorge below. In 1907, local farmer's daughter Sigridur Thomasdottir threatened to throw herself into the falls to stop a hydroelectric plant from being built there, and Gullfoss remains untouched today. The canyon downstream twists for 2.5 kilometers, carved by catastrophic glacial floods thousands of years ago that carried far more water than the river does now. On sunny days, the spray thrown up by the second drop catches the light at just the right angle to form a full circular rainbow visible from the canyon rim. In winter, the falls partially freeze into massive columns of ice, while the core of the waterfall keeps roaring beneath a shell of frost. Gullfoss means Golden Falls, named for the golden hue the glacial silt gives the water on clear afternoons as it catches the low Arctic sun. In Croatia, 16 turquoise lakes cascade into one another through dozens of travertine waterfalls, an entire chain of falls built not by a single river, but by centuries of mineral deposits layering into natural dams. The drone drifts between 2 lakes at different elevations, tracing the exact point where a travertine dam has grown thick enough to spill water into a curtain of small falls. At the lower lakes, the largest single drop plunges 78 meters over a moss-covered limestone cliff into a misty pool ringed by wooden footbridges. The travertine barriers are alive, built by algae, moss, and bacteria that deposit calcium carbonate year after year, meaning the shape of the falls is still slowly changing today. The color of each lake shifts between turquoise, green, and gray depending on mineral content, sunlight angle, and the microorganisms living in the water. During heavy rain, dozens of temporary waterfalls appear along the forested slopes, doubling the number of falls visible for just a few days at a time. The park has been protected since 1949, and swimming in the lakes has been banned for decades to keep the fragile travertine formations from eroding. In winter, the falls partially freeze into cascades of icicles while warmer spring-fed sections keep flowing, creating a landscape of ice and moving water side by side. In California, Yosemite Falls drops 739 meters in 3 stages, down a sheer granite cliff, the tallest waterfall in North America, and by late summer it can vanish completely, leaving only a stain of dark rock behind. The drone climbs the full height of the upper fall, tracing 435 meters of continuous freefall down smooth granite before the water breaks apart into mist. Between the upper and lower falls, a series of cascades drops through a narrow gorge invisible from the valley floor, connecting the two famous drops most tourists never see together. At peak snowmelt in late spring, the roar of the falls can be heard from more than a kilometer away across the valley floor, rattling car windows in the parking lots below. By August most years, the waterfall runs completely dry, its granite face turning a dark streaked gray as the last trickle of snowmelt disappears from the mountains above. On clear nights near a full moon, the mist at the base of the lower fall sometimes catches enough light to form a faint lunar rainbow, a phenomenon so rare it draws photographers from across the state. Indigenous Awanichi people considered the base of the falls home to a spirit called Palati and avoided camping too close to the roaring water after dark. Rock climbers occasionally scale the sheer granite beside the dry upper fall in late summer, a route considered one of the most exposed multi-pitch climbs in the park. Deep in Guyana's untouched rainforest, Cayeter Falls drops 226 meters in a single unbroken plunge, 4 times the height of Niagara, pouring more water over a single drop than almost any other waterfall on Earth. The drone approaches from downriver, tracing the Pitaro River as it flows calmly for kilometers, before suddenly vanishing over a sandstone escarpment into open air. At the lip of the falls, the entire width of the river funnels into a single curtain of water that free falls for over 200 meters without touching rock. The spray cloud at the base is so thick and constant that a permanent microclimate has formed around it, supporting plant species found nowhere else on the plateau. Because it sits in one of the most remote parts of South America, Cayeter remains almost entirely undeveloped, with no fences, no gift shops, and only a small ranger station nearby. Golden poison frogs and thousands of swifts that nest directly behind the sheet of falling water are among the only creatures that make their home inside the spray itself. Because the falls are only reachable by small aircraft or a multi-day trek through jungle, fewer visitors see Cayeter in a year than visit Niagara Falls in a single afternoon. Guyanese oral history holds that the falls are named for a chief called Kaye, who paddled his canoe over the edge in a sacrifice meant to protect his people from invaders. We're halfway through the list, and from here the drops only get taller, the rivers only get wider, and the spray only gets thicker. In South Africa's Drakensberg Mountains, Tugela Falls drops 948 meters down a sheer basalt amphitheater in 5 free-leaping tiers, making it one of the tallest waterfalls anywhere on the planet. The drone climbs past the first 2 tiers, tracing thin ribbons of water that free-fall clear of the rock face entirely before gathering again on wide basalt ledges. At the top, the Tugela River gathers on the flat summit of the Drakensberg Amphitheater before suddenly committing to the edge of what becomes the 5th tier of the drop. Because the falls depend entirely on seasonal rain and snowmelt, they can shrink to a trickle in the dry winter months, only to roar back to full power after summer storms. The amphitheater itself stretches 5 kilometers wide, a wall of basalt cliffs so vast that the falls appear almost small against the scale of the rock behind them. Hikers who reach the summit above the falls can peer directly over the edge of the first drop, a viewpoint locals call one of the most vertigo-inducing in southern Africa. The name Tugela comes from the Zulu word for sudden, a reference to how abruptly the river commits to the edge of the amphitheater with almost no warning from upstream. On rare clear winter mornings, frost forms along the upper tiers while mist still rises from the warmer pools far below, 2 seasons visible on a single waterfall. In Lebanon, the Bayatara River doesn't just fall. It disappears through 3 natural limestone bridges stacked on top of each other before plunging 255 meters into a sinkhole cave carved over millions of years. The drone drops through the mouth of the sinkhole, tracing the river as it falls past the first of 3 natural bridges formed by an ancient collapsed cave roof. Beneath the second bridge, the canyon narrows into a cathedral-like chamber where sunlight only reaches the water for a few hours each day. The third and final bridge frames the last stretch of the drop, where the water disappears into a dark cave mouth that has never been fully explored to its end. The gorge takes its name from the nearby village of Ba'atara, and locals call the sinkhole the Cave of the Three Bridges, or Balu Bala in Arabic. In summer, the falls slow to a thin veil of water as the mountain snowmelt that feeds them dries up, revealing the full stacked structure of all three bridges at once. The limestone bridges themselves are the collapsed remnants of a much larger cave system, each one a fragment of ceiling that refused to fall along with the rest. Cavers who have explored the chambers below the lowest bridge describe an underground river continuing for hundreds of meters through total darkness before their equipment reached its limit. Between the United States and Canada, Niagara Falls moves more water than almost any waterfall in North America, over 6 million cubic feet crashing over the edge every single minute at peak flow. The drone traces the full curve of Horseshoe Falls, following the water as it bends around the widest and most powerful section of the entire waterfall system. At night, colored floodlights turn the rising mist into shifting sheets of red, blue, and green, a tradition that has lit the falls almost every evening since 1925. Beneath the surface, the Niagara River has been quietly eroding the rock ledge for 12,000 years, causing the falls to slowly retreat upstream by roughly a foot each year. In 1969, engineers dammed the American side completely for months, draining it dry to study erosion, revealing bare rock and old debris that had been hidden beneath the falls for over a century. The Maid of the Mist boats have carried passengers to the base of the falls since 1846, one of the oldest continuously operating tourist attractions in North America. During the coldest winters, spray from the falls freezes onto nearby trees and railings, coating the entire riverbank in inches of glittering ice while the main falls keep roaring beneath a frozen mist cloud. Daredevils have gone over Niagara Falls in barrels since 1901, and while a handful survived, the practice is now illegal on both the American and Canadian sides. On the border of Argentina and Brazil, Iguazu isn't one waterfall but 275 of them, spread across nearly 3 kilometers of jungle river, wider than Niagara and Victoria Falls combined. The drone sweeps the full width of the system, passing dozens of individual falls in a single continuous flight, each one separated by small forested islands. At the center of it all, the Devil's Throat swallows half the river's entire flow into a U-shaped chasm 80 meters deep, sending up a spray column visible for kilometers. Great dusky swifts nest by the thousands directly inside the spray of the Devil's Throat, diving through the falling water to reach nests hidden on the cliff face behind. The falls sit inside 2 national parks that together protect one of the largest remaining stretches of Atlantic forest, home to jaguars, tapirs, and hundreds of bird species. During the dry season, some of the 275 falls slow to a trickle or stop entirely, while the wet season can send flow rates high enough to submerge walkways along the riverbank. A system of steel walkways lets visitors walk directly out over the river to stand at the very edge of the Devil's Throat, close enough to feel the spray as a constant rain. Legend among the Guarani people tells of a river god who cursed a fleeing couple by carving the gorge beneath them, splitting the river into the hundreds of falls that remain today. Just 3 waterfalls left, and the final one is so tall that scientists still argue about exactly where it ends. On the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe, Victoria Falls forms the largest sheet of falling water on Earth, 1,708 meters wide, known locally as Mosi Oatunya, the smoke that thunders. The drone traces the entire curtain in one pass, revealing a wall of falling water so wide it takes nearly 2 minutes to fly its full length at a comfortable cruising speed. At peak flood season, the spray column rises over 400 meters into the sky, visible from more than 50 kilometers away, and giving the falls their local name. The Zambezi River drops into a narrow zigzag gorge directly opposite the falls, forcing the entire outflow through a channel less than 100 meters wide. A natural rock pool called the Devil's Pool forms right at the lip of the falls during low water season, letting a handful of daring swimmers sit at the very edge of the drop. David Livingstone became the first European to see the falls in 1855, later writing that angels themselves must have paused mid-flight to look upon something so beautiful. During the driest months, sections of the falls can slow to a trickle while others keep roaring at full force, splitting the famous curtain into a patchwork of wet and dry rock. A lunar rainbow forms across the spray on clear nights near the full moon, one of only a handful of places on Earth where this phenomenon can reliably be seen. Straddling the border of Vietnam and China, Bonjiok de Tien is the largest waterfall in Asia to span two countries, a three-tiered curtain nearly 300 meters wide pouring over karst limestone cliffs. The drone crosses the invisible border mid-air, following the falls from the Vietnamese side to the Chinese side, where locals on both banks fish from the same river within sight of each other. At the base, dozens of small bamboo rafts drift right up to the spray line, giving visitors a rare chance to touch the mist of a waterfall shared by two nations. The river feeding the falls, called the Quai Sin on the Vietnamese side, winds through a valley of dramatic limestone karst peaks that look almost identical to the scenery of nearby Ha Long Bay. Because the falls sit directly on an international border, both Vietnam and China have built separate tourist facilities on their own banks, each offering a different angle of the same waterfall. During monsoon season, the three tiers merge into a single overwhelming sheet of muddy brown water, while in the dry season, the layered structure separates into clear turquoise steps. Local legend holds that the falls formed where a heartbroken dragon wept for 9 days after being separated from its family, the tiers representing each day of its tears. Rice paddies terrace the hillsides around the falls on both sides of the border, turning bright green in summer and golden at harvest time, framing the waterfall in changing seasonal colors. In the heart of Venezuela's Canema National Park, Angel Falls drops 979 meters, the tallest uninterrupted waterfall on Earth, so high that most of the water turns to mist before it ever reaches the ground. The drone climbs from the jungle floor along the full height of the falls, tracing 807 meters of uninterrupted freefall before the water breaks apart into drifting mist. At the summit, the river simply walks off the edge of Aoyan Tepui, a flat-topped mountain plateau so vast that clouds regularly form below its own rim. In the dry season, so little water reaches the base that the falls appear to end in mid-air entirely, the last of the flow scattering into the jungle canopy as fine rain. American aviator Jimmy Angel first flew over the falls in 1933 searching for gold, and later crash-landed his small plane on the summit of the Tepui, surviving an 11-day trek back to civilization. The Tepui itself formed over 2 billion years ago, making the sandstone plateau the falls pour from among the oldest rock formations exposed anywhere on the planet's surface. No roads reach Angel Falls. Visitors travel for days by dugout canoe up jungle rivers before hiking the final stretch through rainforest to reach the base of the falls. Local Pemon people call the falls Karapakubai Vina, meaning waterfall of the deepest place, a name used for centuries before the Tepui ever appeared on a world map. 12 waterfalls that turn rivers into thunder. Subscribe to Impossible Travel for the next countdown, coming soon from somewhere just as extreme.